get started. My name is Heather Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of the Cameron Art Museum, and I am so happy to welcome you tonight to the opening of the Space Makers exhibition. This exhibition has been a labor of love, a work in progress for the past 2 years. 2 years ago, we received a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And where's Georgia Masterleading? Where is she? Oh, there she is. This is Georgia Masterleading. She is our Deputy Director of Operations. For the past 2 years, Georgia has led a group of people, our Accessibility Committee. If you are on the Accessibility Committee, and if you're here, can you just make yourself known by maybe clapping your hand or waving your hands and just letting us know that you're here. Because they should all have lanyards that they're wearing around their necks. These people, these groups, this group of amazing individuals have helped to chart a new course for Cameron Art Museum to help to create a more accessible art museum, a more inclusive art museum for everyone. And I'm going to try not to get emotional tonight because it has been one of the most rewarding and meaningful experiences that I have had at Cameron Art Museum. Georgia likes to say that the Accessibility Committee gives us the best butt kicking that you can get every time we meet with them. We think we're doing all the things right? We've got large print guides, we've got sensory bags, we've got American Sign Language interpreters, and we always find out that there's something that we didn't get quite right. But we believe in the motto, nothing about us without us. Can you guys say that with me? Nothing about us without us. Like, just feel that for a minute, right? What it means to be heard and included. And so we look to our Accessibility Committee to guide us and help us to become better because we are all works in progress, right? We're all works in progress, and we accept each other and we love each other for who we are. There are some really special people here tonight. If you are an artist for this exhibition, could you please wave your hand and let us know where you are? Have y'all seen the exhibition? Have you seen Space Makers? Okay, let's give another round of applause. One of the most meaningful and important exhibitions that we have done at Cameron Art Museum. And I am so grateful to each and every one of you, and incredibly grateful to Aaron Wilcox, who is the curator. I'm not going to look at him because I will start to cry, of this exhibition, for what he has brought and what each of you have brought by bringing your voices to Southeastern North Carolina's Art Museum. I want to say a sincere thank you to each and every one of you. I also want to thank the Institute of Museum and Library Services for funding this project and funding our accessibility plan. I also want to thank the endowment for their support of this exhibition. Now I'm going to give 2 introductions to Aaron Wilcox, our curator. I'm going to give the official, serious introduction, and then I'm going to give a more heartfelt introduction. You guys ready? We'll go serious first, right? Aaron Wilcox has been a faculty member at UNC Wilmington for the past 27 years and is completing his 6th and final year as chair of the Art and Art History Department this summer. That's a long time, Aaron.
Yes.
That's a very patient man. He attended Cranbrook Academy of Art in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and earned an MFA in ceramics with Tony Hepburn. He holds an undergraduate degree from UNC Greensboro in studio art and religious studies, which is one of my favorite combinations. I hear we've got another UNCG person out there. That's right. He also earned an MA in Liberal Studies, and he recently added a late entry, an MBA from UNCW, which has led to several exciting relationships with the Cameron Art Museum and the North Carolina Pottery Center. I will say that here at Cameron Art Museum, Aaron led a needs assessment that we did in 2001.
I don't know.
Okay, we did it at some point. A lot of it was on Zoom, so it was during the pandemic.
Okay.
And that needs assessment led us to understand that one of the things that we really lacked was an accessibility plan. So that needs assessment, we're kind of coming full circle here. He also helped to lead a residency with the executive MBA program from UNCW that happened here last fall that helped all of us here at Cameron Art Museum to learn that we have a $6.9 million economic impact on Eastern North Carolina. Aaron grew up in Winston-Salem and lived and worked at Renolda House Museum of American Art, Renolda Gardens. In Greensboro, he worked as collections preparator at the Weatherspoon Art Museum and had a brief stint as a preparator at the Cranbrook Art Museum in the summer of 1996. As Aaron prepares and plans for this exhibition, he wants to put special emphasis that he uses a wheelchair. This gives him a thrilling amount of physical, mental, and creative mobility. And here's a more personal introduction from us at Cameron Art Museum. Aaron Wilcox gets us. That's one of the things we love about him at CAM. He understands who we are as an institution and why we do what we do. We believe in the power of art to transform and heal. Aaron's empathy is one of his greatest skills, and it is this beautiful empathy and ability to connect deeply with others which truly makes Space Makers such a transformative exhibition. Thank you, Aaron, for the gift of your curation, and thank you to all the artists who are here with us tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce Aaron Wilcox.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. And I'm really honored to be here. So part of it is going to be, I may repeat a little bit of what Heather said. You know, I've got this friend, David, who every time I say something, I'll use like 50 words, and then David will use 2. And it's David Morrison, and he always gets it right. So I think we're going to do something similar to that. Heather sums everything up so nicely. But so I'm Aaron Wilcox. Heather already said that. That's like the first 15 minutes of my talk. But I do want to make sure I like stress a couple of important things. Is that CAM staff? This is a huge team effort, and I really want to thank Heather's trust in me to do this. This is kind of a big deal. And the rest of the staff, I don't know if Bob's in the room. Everybody sings Bob's praises, and that's for a good reason. Bob's the preparator here. And he's a really, truly extraordinary preparator. I've done a lot of prep work, and I've worked with a lot of preparators, and he is really exceptional. And, you know, the registrar in Georgia in September, and everybody is really pretty incredible. And I know there are parts of this, and Matt, there are parts of this that happened without directly talking to me about it to make the exhibition come up. And, you know, I want to just make sure we thank those people. That the exhibition would not happen without the museum. And, you know, I've also got this other old friend that I started college with, and, you know, we've kind of been around each other for the last 40 some years. It's not that long, but, and it's Ben's like the closer. So I was getting ready to blow it. I was tired this week, and I was like, man, I gotta get to this thing that we've been working so hard for a year and a half. And then Ben kind of really kept me going and helped me refocus and rest and build up to it so that I could share all the work that's been done. So I want to, pretty incredible to be able to work with him in this regard. I wanted a little bit about the story of this show. I was invited to this accessibility committee, and I started really participating in this. There's some depth here that we're probably not going to get into, or else we'd be here until tomorrow, talking about disability and my disability and how it kind of unfolded over the course of my life. But you know, I've been disabled for a really long time, but I ignored it, didn't accept it, whatever the case. I did all the same things that you always hear about. And then I finally sat down. I was like, wait, man, I gotta do this. I sat down. I was telling an old friend of mine this just a minute ago. I couldn't get from the bed to the couch, and I'm not intending for this to be a whole big Aaron personal story thing, but and I was like, I got to sit down. I got to do something, and we got to the point where this was going to happen, and I thought I had to stop teaching. I had to go into administration of all things, and Don will really appreciate that. But and then I sat down. I was like, wait, I don't need to do administration. I can go back to teaching. I can go back to making art. I can do ceramics. I mean, this is incredible. So everybody comes at this in a really different way, and that's an important thing to remember. So some people it's really sudden. Some people it's really slow. Like for me, it's a really slow progression. And that we need to acknowledge that you could be in this situation and be like really excited. Like this is, I mean, I haven't seen Lee in 30 years, not that long, but a long time. And he probably remembers an excitement of me that's similar to this that a lot of people wouldn't have seen for 20 years. So for him, I'm not any different than I was when I was a kid. So that's really nice. And so our understanding of disability needs to embrace a really wide swath of experiences and ideas and perspectives. Anyway, I was on the accessibility committee. So I checked back in. I was starting to participate a little bit more in life. I felt better. I wanted to do something. And, if you can tell anything by the way that I'm talking now, I get pretty excited pretty quick. And so I wanted to, I just wanted to participate and engage with the world and the places. I love this place. I couldn't come to the art museum for a long time as much as I wanted to because I didn't feel good. So then I started coming. I started participating in the ADA committee. I started getting really involved in that. And then, they were really excited. They were talking, said, we're going to have an exhibition on art and disability. I was like, okay. Yeah, right. Who's going to curate that? And they didn't really have an answer, so I thought about it for I said 45 seconds this morning, but I don't think it was even that long. But in that amount of time, a couple of years went around in my head, and I was like, okay, I'll do it if you'll let me do it. I don't want to be presumptuous because what do I know about curatorial stuff? I am a ceramist, so that I do feel like that gives me license to do just about anything. But I'm not totally sure that that's really qualifies me well for this. So either way, I've got some other experience that builds into it. But it still was somewhat audacious. I wasn't really prepared. I didn't know how to think about it. And then as it kind of unfolded, it turned out, oh well, we want to use this exhibition to build relationships within the state. So we want to have North Carolina artists. I was like, okay, all right. I don't know what to do now. I don't even know how I was thinking. I wasn't to the point of thinking about it enough to really understand. But then we had this new variable in here. I needed to understand that too. And what was the other one? There was some other variable. I can't remember. That kind of just helped me get redirected. And the director at Cranbrook, Gerhard Nodell, he was a fiber artist. He was really good. He used to talk about the importance of commissions and that, a lot of artists think, oh, we just want to work freely and do whatever we want. But commissions give us the ability to work within a structure and a set of guidelines. And you can be just as creative, if not more, if you've got these limitations on you. So I kind of thought about that in regards to this, and it really helped. So I still didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to identify the artists. And Ricardo, right? Yeah, asked me a question today that irritated me. He said, it was something I left out in my original talk this morning, which was, how did you identify these artists? And I think that's a great question and probably something that people want to hear. And, since we're not sitting in the gallery, we don't have the work behind us, gonna hope that you've either been in there or are gonna go back in there and look at the work afterwards. But so I had a lot of help identifying the artists. The Arts Access North Carolina has a program, an Artist Link project, and they've got artists put their work out there. It's only for artists with disabilities. It's really interesting and engaging, and so that was my starting point. And so I used that, and there were some other things too, but I used that to get rolling. And I would look at the art, and I would get all the art is incredible. Like, I want to stress that this work is a small section of the work of artists in North Carolina with disabilities that is being made. And so much of it is really incredible work. And I think I'll talk a little bit about why I think that is in a second. But I looked at the work, I got interested in the work, and then I read the story, I read a little bit about what people said about it, and then I was like, okay, great. And then I had an awesome intern, Megan, who helped me, especially at the beginning of this project, and we met with the artists, and we talked to the artists, and we got engaged with them, we invited them to the show, and it was really an exciting moment. And we would always be super jazzed up afterwards about who we had talked to and the kind of work that they made. So that was one way that it came about. Another was my mom told me about a friend of hers in Winston-Salem. And, I think I would have found your work anyway, Terry, but, it happened from my mom. And so I love my mom, so I listened to her. And she was right, and the work is incredible. I don't know how that came up. And then Heather and Georgia knew some artists around as well. And so then we kind of got all of this stuff together, and we got the artists, we got a collection of artists that we thought would fit. Like, it's a small space, so we had to make some decisions. As we were thinking, as Megan and I were talking about this and working, we also, we had some museum, like, what would you call it? Museum preconceived ideas about what museums are. So we thought, well, we'll make sure to. Someone who laughed just there. That was funny. We maybe should put some historical artists in here. That's an interesting issue when you're dealing with disability, because if they didn't address their disability, we can't address the disability for them, which is a real conundrum. We identified an artist at the Ackland that's a living artist that addresses this disability. But I was thinking, well, they want to work with other museums. We could maybe borrow stuff from the collection, but really not the same, because the perception of disability has changed so much over the past, since beginning in the early 70s and then, now. But how much did it really change during that time? So maybe it's really only changed the stigma in the past 10, 15 years. I don't know. There are a lot of people that know a whole lot more about the activism piece than I do. And I hope that you'll talk to them about that. But it's a really exciting time. It's a people just making themselves seen and heard, and making sure that the world accepts and embraces the variety. And so as we were building the show, I did a project in I don't know why Madison did this, but Madison was doing something, and I did some print type quick thing with a paper that said "make space." I was trying to make a bunch of space for myself at the university and just in the world in general. Now that I was using a wheelchair, and then that kind of led to what was the first iteration? I can't remember, but then I ran into Ben in the hallway, and we were like in space makers. That idea of people actively making space for themselves, this idea of engagement with the world around them. So anyway, that's how the whole title came up, and I think, as I was talking about before, there's such a range of approaches to disability, and we're acknowledging all of those, but this particular exhibition is about people that embrace that aspect of themselves in order to make themselves seen, heard, and felt in the world. So that's what we're talking about here. Like, I know, because I was one of them, that there are a lot of people with disabilities that don't want to talk about it, don't want it to be engaged. That's fine. This is not the place for them in this exhibition. So there are lots of places for those people, but if you're really trying to get people going and tell this giant honking story, you need to have people that are really out there. We sent out these invitations, and in this situation, one artist said they didn't want their disability to define them. Well, that's totally understandable, just not here. So for here, it's not. There's a lot of like fluidity and nuance to this, defining like where does disability sit in this whole conversation about the artwork that's being made. Like, is it about disability? Is this at the forefront? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes, as Terry says, it's through the lens of disability, which is great. That's one of those moments where I'm going to talk for 20 minutes and Terry says it in 2 words. That nuance about where this all happens, exists, how much that defines the work. And yeah, I mean, it kind of does. I mean, it definitely defines the way that I interact with the world. It always has. I'm just acknowledging it a little bit differently now. So I don't know how to think about it. And I want you all to go into the exhibition and think about how you perceive this work. Some of it's really explicitly about disability, and I kind of think it's all explicitly about disability, but that nuance may not be seen or heard or felt or whatever in that moment. So anyway, I'll be interested to know what you think about this. Anyway, I had to send out these emails to people, and they were cold calls, like they didn't know who I was. So I needed to make sure they trusted me. Like, I couldn't just say, hey, can you participate in this show about artists with disabilities in North Carolina? Most people would be like, no way. I'm not doing that. Somebody else is going to be taking advantage of me. So I had to introduce myself, make myself kind of legitimate, and hopefully people would listen. And if I didn't, then those individuals weren't going to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability is such an important part of art making. You add in a disability to that, and you're like through the roof kind of big deal. So I think that's really important. And I want to, there are a couple things I want to talk about in terms of this. So since we're all at different stages of disability, art making, career, everything, there's a real range of everything in that exhibition. Maria's still in school. Terry's been making art for however long. Like we've got the whole gamut of where you are in your career. And also where you are in terms of disability. So I was at work one day, and we had this exhibition in the gallery, and it was really fantastic. I was really excited that this woman was coming back. She was a student in the for me maybe 15 years ago. I can't remember how long ago it was. I'd kept up with her, but I hadn't seen her a lot, maybe once or twice during that time. She was making great work, installation stuff, really engaging and exciting. I really think about her all the time because, a lot of times students come to the university and they're like all eager to learn, but they also have a lot of ideas about what the right thing is. And she was definitely one of those people. So I was always pushing her and really, and this plays into the rest of the story here. I was trying to get her to really think about things, I guess. I mean, I thought I was just talking with her. So I went into the gallery. I hadn't seen her, and I certainly hadn't seen her since I started using a wheelchair. And I don't think she knew ahead of time. Okay. And so I roll in and I'm like, I was really excited to see her. I gave her a hug. We didn't really talk about it. This is interesting because this just happened recently too. And then I was like, yeah, did you know I was using a wheelchair? And so her response really, so I'm really jazzed up about this. And her response was, and I can't remember how long it took, that there was something in her future about this. And I was like, what? And so that's an interesting thing as well. Like, you know, I'm super happy. I feel way good now, but I mean, it's not the kind of thing you would want somebody else to be doing, using, whatever. Maybe they enter into this relationship in this similar way. I don't know what, but anyway, it's challenging. I mean, it is hard. So, I mean, we should acknowledge that it's hard. Like, the world is not set up for us. You know, we've got all kinds of barriers. We've got language barriers, architectural barriers, all kinds of perception barriers. Anyway, so she said this, it was a big deal, and I've kind of engaged with her a little bit about it. I found out some more information. And, you know, yeah, so she was just starting on this journey, thinking about what her life was going to be like. This was at an exhibition in the gallery. And so I thought about this for a while, and this happened right at the end of the academic year, I think. And then we had a couple of months, and we were building this show, and I was like, I think I'm going to ask her if she wants to be in this show. And that, I don't know if she had told anybody really outside of her family before telling me. So, and I don't know. I'm doing a little presumptuous stuff here. But so I asked her to be in the show, and I don't think it took her long to decide. But and that is what this is. I think that is what this is about. This exhibition is about this ability to acknowledge, embrace, think about the world in a different way and with some different perspectives about disability and art making, and having the strength and the courage to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. Really incredible. So anyway, I'm so glad that she is in the show, and it's Meredith. So you'll see her work, and I hope that you'll talk to her about it. It's really magnificent. That's an interesting little bit too about this, about curating a show about disability and trying to figure out this nuance about, you know, how much do we talk about, what do we do with this? And so they asked me, I feel like in some regard, and you know, they're going to appreciate this, I think, in retrospect, that there's been some escalation of commitment. Like, I agreed to the show and what I understood about curating a show, and then, hey, Aaron, can you do this? Hey, Aaron, can you do this? Hey, Aaron, can you do this? And at one point, they were like, well, can you write some didactic, some wall text for the labels? I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And so I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I was like, well, okay, I'll try. And so I tried, and I presented. Can I tell the story? Yeah. Okay. I wrote some haikus, and I was really excited about it. And they were. I don't know if they were good. They helped me think about the work, and I think that they tapped into the individual artists and, you know, what they were like. I don't know, but. Heather was so patient with me. Like, she started talking, and you know, it was really calm, clean, professional, and I knew what was coming. It was like, Aaron, you can't do that. But I didn't really want to write the labels, and the reason I didn't want to write the labels is because I didn't feel comfortable talking about what I thought was going to be kind of a defining component of the artist's participation in the exhibition. So I didn't really know how I felt about talking about each individual's disability. What does this mean for the work itself? So I couldn't do it. I passed it off to Ben. And, and so Ben did it, and thankfully I've known him for a very long time. And he wrote it, and I was blown away because he just wrote it. He just said the thing. And he said, it's really, representation is really important. It's really important to be open and clear and honest about it. And he was absolutely right. And now, so when you go into that exhibition, you can get the name, the title, the date, and that would be kind of it for the most. If it had been me who had to, I don't think that would have been the right decision, but that's what you would have gotten. And then you would have been left with a lot of questions. I mean, how many exhibitions have we been to where we're left with questions about the artists? And if I recently went to an exhibition on an artist with disabilities, it was really unclear if any of those artists had a disability. And so now Ben very clearly wrote it on the label. And I really appreciate that. And he didn't make anything up. He didn't take anything that wasn't, out in the public already. So it was really excellent. I'm really grateful to him for doing that. And I do want to say, yeah, Ben. All right. I do want to also say that every artist in the exhibition has a disability. So we can just take that off the table. There should be no question about that. I don't think there should be a question about it at all if it's an artist with a disability. I mean, an art exhibition about artists with disabilities in North Carolina. So, but surprisingly, that is somewhat the case. And I think that's a nothing about us without us thing comment that Heather mentioned earlier. That was if you're all familiar with that, I mean, that's been used throughout time here. I think it got traced back to the 1500s, and the disability movement took it from South Africa and applied it really well, and that's in the early 70s where it became really well known. So anyway, I appreciate that, and that's also why I wanted to make sure that I was curating the show, because I have a disability. So I think one of the things you're going to see in there, and maybe have heard in this talk, is like this talk is not linear. I've been going back and forth about some things, and I have some notes. They haven't done me any good, but I have spiraled around these ideas, and that is an aesthetic that is not. I don't want to use the word common because everything is different, but that whole non-linear perspective of disorder, of not the same structure. I mean, those are some of the things that you can see in artists with disabilities and the work that they do. I mean, if you look at Devin's work, the installation of Devin's work is, they didn't even tell us what to do, but it was just that the work was kind of up around working through the stuff. I think that we got it right. They said that we did, but that could have just been being nice. So anyway, but that non-linear aspect I think is really important. So as you're in the exhibition, consider that component. Now, it's not always the case. Really, a lot of people are really structured, really regimented, really straightforward. So I don't actually know if that's the case in there. Is it? No? Okay. All right. And then, so language vulnerability. We didn't talk about language, but I think that we should acknowledge the changing landscape of disability in the world right now. And, I hope it keeps going that way. I mean, it could go south, pretty quick. But I think there has been a changing landscape over at least the past 10 years. Much more acceptance is not the right word. It is the right word, but I don't think it's deep enough. So much more of an understanding of the importance of different perspectives in the world. And, when we started moving towards disability defined as through the social model rather than the medical model, very quick, for those of you that may or may not know that, medical model is diagnosis and what can we do to fix this. Social model is more like, the world's not quite right for everybody. We need to make some adjustments here. So that's the kind of direction we've been leaning, and I think that's been really helpful in terms of how we, understand people's place in the world. I had this one funny thing. I was trying to work on the metaphor for this. It's probably not quite right, but I think it's important. I went to move my kids from Winston-Salem to Boston. And so I was there the other week. I got to the hotel really late. Somebody was parked in front of the access ramp to the hotel. It was raining. I couldn't park under the cover anyway because I was going to have to transfer in and out too many times, and it was going to be a pain. So I just parked. I rolled through the rain, and then there was somebody in front of the ramp. And I was like, man, dang. And I didn't really care. I mean, it was fine. I asked them to move. It was 11 o'clock at night. They couldn't move. They couldn't drive the car. Their mom was inside. Anyway, and so I started thinking about that. And then the next day, I pulled out of the driveway where my son and his fiance were moving, and I pulled across onto Hawthorne Road, and I parked just for a minute so that I could wave goodbye to him, and I could send a text to my mom and say I was leaving town, because I still do that. I parked in front of somebody's driveway, and they came out, and they were like, they were hot. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes people just aren't paying attention. Sometimes it's not an attack. Sometimes it's indifference. Sometimes it's extreme deference, which is really interesting if you have a disability. Like we were rolling out to Jockey's Ridge, and I was up on that boardwalk area, and we noticed that every time I got to a viewing platform, people kind of scattered, and you're not going to catch it, But I don't think that's what it was. I just think it was just this extreme deference. What kind of, I asked a friend, what kind of feedback did you get on this? And she didn't get any feedback on this particular statement. And I don't think it's because that people don't care. I think it's a deference. People don't know what to say. People think that if they say the wrong thing, they're going to get in trouble. I think as long as we talk about disability and people with empathy and honesty and kindness and compassion, it's fine. I don't really care what you say. I don't care if it's person first, identity first. Some people get all bent out of shape if you say that you're a person with a disability instead of you're a disabled person. Or some communities are way into the whole identity first thing. If you don't address that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Not really. Nobody cares. Then I was right kind of when I started this. I was like, oh man, I don't like this particular word. And I was, which was interesting. It doesn't matter. So as long as you're kind and respectful, please talk with people with disabilities. People aren't going to hold it against you for the next 30 years. So this is not the university. Some of my colleagues are here. Anyway, there's a lot of courage. There's a lot of courage in that room. There's a lot of ambition. There's a lot of accomplishment. You think about just art making in general. Making a piece of art is an incredible accomplishment. If you have nothing and you create something, that's really something. That's like if we really start thinking about that, that's not the kind of thing everybody does. And you're pouring yourself into it. So I think when we look at art and we see that, we can easily get overwhelmed. We sometimes get caught up in the formal aspects of it, like how did this person apply the paint? What kind of print is this? How did they mold the clay? Whatever. The thing that's really interesting is the intent, the idea, the audacity to make this thing. So anyway, it's an exciting moment for me, and I see a lot of accomplishment in the other room. So I wrote in the thing. If anybody takes the time to read the thing, the gallery guide essay, I wrote in there about this guy Robert Hughes used to write little snippets of art criticism in the back of Time magazine. And I wrote in there, which is true, that really appealed to my attention span. Like, I couldn't take much more art history or art criticism. Yeah, I think I'm okay saying that. And for like long periods of too many words, and which is ironic because of all the words I'm using. So he would write these little things, and they were great. They were truly fantastic, But at one point, he even said, like, cloning was the true American art form, which I loved. I'm not even sure I understood. But he said art never changed anything. And I know what he meant. I understand what he was talking about. But I started applying that for the first 30 years of my art making experience to, I don't know, some formal aspect of sculpture or ceramics or whatever it was I was doing. But I think he was totally wrong. He's completely wrong about that. I just watched Crib Camp again. If you haven't watched that movie documentary, you should really watch it. It's fantastic. It's hilarious. It's devastating. I wept through the entire 2 hours of the show, the movie. We can have laws. We can change procedure, policy. It's not going to make any difference unless people change their perspective. And art changes everything. Like, I don't know what else would do it, but it's got to be art. So I think that's probably a good spot. I want to make sure that, with that in mind, please support artists, continue to support artists, continue to come to the museum, especially museums like Cameron. Pretty fantastic. I've been involved in a couple of museums. Cameron, Reynolda House I grew up in, Weatherspoon I worked at, Cranbrook Art Museum in Cameron, and there are all these kind of small, quirky, interesting museums that address things that people really care about in a more focused way, which is nice. Like, it's great to have DNA Institute of the Arts. Like, the fourth largest museum in the country in Detroit is incredible. It's a little expensive. It's a little hard to get to see anything. So Cameron, though, really kind of boils it down, gives it to you in like a nice reduction. Really excellent. So anyway, please continue to support the museum. Okay, thank you so much.
After that really long, rambling, very interesting chat from Aaron, it's clear that not all disabilities are visible.
I know this guy. Anybody's like, what's that heckler doing? I mean, he's still heckling.
It was great. Thank you for bringing this all together.
Yeah. What are you asking me?
No.
All disabilities are different. There are visible disabilities and invisible disabilities. Yeah, right. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
And we shouldn't assume. I think we generally just should not assume anything about an individual or how.
There are some limitations that some people have, sometimes emotional needs or social needs. There are actually not diagnosed limitations.
Yeah. Sure.
All of us have a different particular queerness that makes us unique.
Yeah. Quirkiness. I like that. Who's got the microphone?
I've got the microphone. Thank you so much for that talk, Aaron. I'm also really curious to meet the artists that are here in the room, and I wonder if any of them would like to share their experience of being a part of this exhibit and what it's meant for them, and what were the challenges and what were the joys.
I can, yeah.
but it like came on kind of like slow up and down. I also worked in the arts for a while, so I've been on both sides. Right before COVID hit, I think accessibility was really coming to enter art spaces. So I'm really grateful that a museum is doing like local disability stuff. That's, I think, almost unheard of and really exceptional. And I'm honored to be in the room with the others. I think my work is like inherently about disability because I'm disabled, and the way I paint, it comes from my hand. I have really low energy and low mobility, so, but I also am obsessed with mark making and color and form. And I think as I become more and more disabled and more comfortable with my disability, I start to understand and see it in the artwork a bit more and how I move through the world and my relationships with, people around me, structures around me, both like buildings and systems, and like bumping up against them, wanting to disassemble them. That comes out in how I disassemble the forms within painting as a structure. And I think that's just like evolving more and more and more. And it's also a space where I can just like lose it. Like if I didn't have that, I don't know how I could live in the world at all. So I'm really grateful that that exists. And I feel the same with other artists that are disabled. I get a lot from their work and being, here.
Hello, I'm Wally Johnson. I'm an abstract artist from RMC. I've been disabled since 17. My talk about tachycardia triggered all of it. So first I had problems with heart, then I had problems with concussion, and then I had problems with autism, and now currently I have autism.
Well, Wiley has autism spectrum disorder. I'm his mom, and I'm a retired internal medicine physician, but I never knew in retirement I would become an art manager. If anybody had said that to me, I would have told them they were totally crazy. But Wiley really started painting more in 2009. He had been at UNC Chapel Hill in psychiatric unit after a psychotic breakdown. Okay? I've only said this publicly twice. He has autism spectrum disorder. He struggled in school. Well, an art therapist, bless her heart, gave him some watercolors and paper. And he liked that. He came home and he asked for some acrylics. So we got these little 8x10s. And you know what? We ended up with so many 8x10s that I had to figure out how do you sell these things. So we might be at a sporting event or a drama event, and how do I present this? Well, I came up with the idea of a bifold door, okay? And I got these little chain link things, and we put them up there, and we'd always sell one, at least. And it made us so incredibly happy. But then in 2009, we had an artist friend working with us. He put something on Facebook. The guy came to our house. He bought two for $1,000. And I thought, there could be something to it. But then our big break, I think it was 2021. I had called someone over at Art Access because I didn't know anything about how to varnish, how to wire, how to come up with a website, and I would ask her questions if I couldn't figure it out from the internet. And she said, we heard about this company out of Boston called Artwork, and I don't know if there's anything to it, but they're looking for artists with disabilities in North Carolina. So, of course, I immediately go to the website, do the application, and I think, how in the world could anyone with a fill out this application because I was challenged, okay? But anyway, they accepted him. And Wiley became the first artist in North Carolina that they represented. And now they're like, I don't know, 6 or 7 more, and there's probably someone in this exhibit that they're representing. But a guy that was working with us was sitting in a coffee shop near Duke University, and he looked across the room at Chase Bank, and he texted me, and he said, Joy, it looks like Wiley's images are in the bank, in the window, but they're 12 feet tall. And they hadn't told us anything about it because they'd sold the license and they didn't have the money yet, okay? But they had taken an 11 by 14 that had been scanned and had it blown up and were able to reproduce it. In the space of 10 to 14 days, someone else was coming back from the airport. They saw a shopping center in Raleigh and they said, Joy, that looks like Wiley's art. And it was. They've done the same thing again. And Regency Shopping Centers did this little write-up about Wiley and put it across all the Regency centers in the United States. So we were like thrilled. And every place that Art Lifting does these public installations, they put up a little plaque and they say something about the disability. So, you know, that was great. And then, I don't know, within a year, they really liked things for some reason. I guess they got their money. Then, in Wake Forest, they did something I had never seen done before. They, at the ATMs, they did 3 installations, again, of different artists and all. So I've gone on far too long, but when I first started this, I was so happy to be in group shows. And now, Wiley has gone on to have a lot of solo exhibits in the area, but we're always looking for more opportunities. So if you know anyone, Wiley's available and you can fill a gallery.
Back to the gallery, but I do think there's a really important part that Joy mentioned right there, and you know we are often thinking about how we want to be, we value independence over everything. I would like it, and I think a lot of us would like this, if we could value interdependence a little bit more. It's okay to work with other people. It's okay to have some people be really good at one thing and other people be really good at another thing, and then work together to do something a little more collaboratively. We think about how we navigate the world in terms of interdependence instead of independence. I think we'd be maybe a little bit better off. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. And,